to have another workshop where we could help walk you through that step by step. So rain barrels intercept rainwater, thereby reducing the volume that's flowing over the ground. Healthy water for your plants, you can use them on flowers or vegetable plants as long as you're using a food grade barrel. Oftentimes we'll get our barrels and we'll open them up and they smell like fruit juice or pickles or something because they've been used by the food and beverage industry. So we're reducing their waste too, which is great. You can decorate them. Beautiful rain barrel there on the bottom. And yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit because we can't build a rain barrel together today. I'll tell you a little bit about how to install it once you have it. What you're going to want to do is you'll see in the upper left of that rain barrel an outflow. That's when the rain barrel starts to fill up, gives it the ability to flow wherever you want it to go. So by using that sump pump hose, you can direct where that overflow goes. You're going to want to elevate it so the water pressure is such that you can turn on that faucet at the bottom and the water will flow out. You'll have space there for a watering can or to attach a hose. You're going to cut your downspout and use another piece of flexible downspout to direct the water into your rain barrel. And since you are going to be disconnecting this in the winter, you're going to want to hold on to that rest of the downspout that you've unattached and reattach it with some sort of an elbow or a diverter. Again, all of this information will be in the materials that we send out, and I'm happy to answer questions for your specific home if you have them. You can email me a photo or something like that so I can help you. We don't recommend using the rain barrel water for cooking or drinking. The reason that rain barrels are not a host for mosquitoes is because they have a screen on top. Let's see if, yeah, this one you can see that it has some netting on top that deters the mosquitoes from going inside the rain barrel. You can also use what's called a mosquito dunk or add some kind of a soapy material which acts as a surfactant so the mosquitoes can't lay their eggs in the water. You don't want to collect your rainwater if you suspect that the roof from which the water is coming from has some kind of a moss killer or other chemical contaminants on it. So you want to be really mindful of that. Okay, so with that, we'll go into rain gardens. A lot to say about rain gardens, but I'll try to keep it pretty straightforward. The rain garden is a functional element of your landscape. It is just as beautiful as any other planted area of your landscape, but it's formed in such a way that it has a particular purpose. So it's a planted depression that intercepts the water coming from some impervious surface, your roof, driveway, sidewalk, compacted lawn, and stops it from getting to the storm drain. So you'll see that there are some beautiful plants in this illustration. By using native wetland plants in that ponding area, their roots are super deep and will actually draw the water down into the ground rather than allowing it to flow over the surface, becoming stormwater. Let's see, this helps to replenish our groundwater. This helps to reduce the flow and volume of stormwater. And it's a beautiful feature. We can have a rain garden that also acts as a pollinator habitat or invites other wildlife into your yard. So really, really cool tool to use. So here are the basic parts of the rain garden. Does it involve a little bit of excavation in your yard because you're going to want to create a berm that will thereby allow some water to pool in the bottom of the ponding area. So that way the plants have time to infiltrate the water through the soil. Now I know some people had a question of if this would invite mosquitoes. The answer is no, because as I'll explain soon, you're going to be doing some soil testing and a percolation test to make sure that that water doesn't stay in the ponding area for more than 24 hours. If it does, that tells us that we need some sort of amendments or to add some plants. The mulch layer is very important. I will talk about that in a little bit. The other features are having an overflow. So that's if there's a really big storm, your rain garden doesn't get totally overflowing with water. Native plants, we always recommend native plants. And of course, the sloping area. That's where the water enters your rain garden. So here I found a pretty good picture of a rain garden. I don't know who that person is, but now you can see for scale. So you can kind of tell that they've created a nice berm there. The curb is notched to allow for overflow. I would just guess that the stormwater flowing into this garden is from the roof and from that kind of upper slope of the lawn. You can see this rain garden has grown in beautifully. I would say this is maybe its second or third year. And I just think this is a really nice example of potentially something that you could install in your yard. So easy as 1, 2, 3. We're going to talk about planning, installation, and maintenance of your rain garden. This image is from Mendham Township Elementary School. This was a number of years ago. So I venture to say that this rain garden has probably grown up quite a bit. Check it out. The first thing you're going to want to do is determine where to install your rain garden. If you are someone that can read maps, not me, you can check out the topographical lines in Google Maps of your yard. And from here, you could see that the 102 on the left, that's going to be the higher elevation. So the water is going to be flowing to the right to where you see that tiny little number 94. So if that's helpful to you, you can go ahead and look at the topo map online of your property. Otherwise, you can just look at where the water is flowing. So this is at Union County Vocational School. This is showing the water that is flowing from this parking lot area into a swale. And it's been mowed right up to the edge, so no wonder they have problems. But this is just when next time it rains, this is a great thing to do while you're home. Just check out your property and see where the water is going, and that'll help you inform where to put your rain garden. Another thing to factor in is you don't want to put your rain garden over any existing utility lines, so call 811, get those laid out before you decide on your final location. And just a couple do's and don'ts about deciding on your location. You don't want it less than 10 feet from your house. That's because we're encouraging water to infiltrate into the soil. You don't want that to affect your foundation. Take it easy on yourself and just choose a flat area of your yard if you have the option. This just makes the installation a little bit easier. Full or partial sunlight's great. It makes your ability to choose plants a little bit easier, but if you have a shady yard, then you'll choose shady plants. And we want to avoid large tree roots. Don't install your rain garden over your septic system. And don't install your rain garden where the water already pools or the lawn is already soggy. This is because we're trying to intercept the water before it gets to that soggy place. I venture to say that if you have a really soggy area, that's because the soil there is very clayey, or there's some other feature of the land there that's causing the water to pool. What you want to do is put your rain garden in between the water source and where you don't want it to go. So you don't want it to go to that soggy spot. You don't want it to go to the storm drain. So you find somewhere in between those two entities. We're going to identify the drainage area. This could be your roof. Like I mentioned, it could be your driveway, sidewalk. It could be a compacted area of lawn. So we're going to just try to get a rough estimate of the square footage of the drainage area that we're collecting the water from. Little bit of math here, length times width. So this house has 2 roofs that we're collecting the water from here. So that's why we're adding 2 different surface areas. So a total area of 500 square feet of drainage area. I'm going to send this form to you. Don't feel like you have to jot it all down right now, but you'll see that as the rain garden gets deeper, if we go from 3 inches to 6 to 8, the square footage of the rain garden can get smaller. So if you are limited with space, you might choose to excavate a little bit deeper so that your rain garden can be fully functional in a smaller amount of space. And again, I'll send this to everybody so you don't have to write it all down right now. So here's just a couple examples of those 2 images. You can see that over here, these are just the barriers for parking. You could also notch your curb if you want to direct the water into your rain garden. And then over here, we have a kind of smallish area for our rain garden to capture that roof's stormwater. So number 1 thing you do, this is all still in the planning stage. We're going to dig a 1 foot deep hole, fill it with water, and wait 24 hours. If it drains, perfect. If it doesn't, this means that we need to add some amendments to the soil, things like sand, not sandbox sand, but the other kind of sand that they have there at Lowe's or Home Depot or your local hardware store, and or compost, which helps the drainage of the soil, because we don't want the water to pool for more than 24 hours. Always recommend a soil test, like we spoke about earlier. Inappropriate application of fertilizer is just one more non-point source pollution. So we recommend doing soil tests. Rutgers has these really fun envelopes that you fill up with soil and you send off, and they send you your results. It's really exciting for me. And that'll help to inform you what the pH of your soil is, other nutrients that you might like to add for full success of your plants. And we are going to be looking also at the texture of the soil to see if it's clay, loamy, sandy. We're going to want nice, rich soil for our plants, and soil that drains well. So again, add a little bit of compost. That'll go a long way. Here's some recommendations for a 100 square foot rain garden that is 6 inches deep. Again, fertilizer, always follow the soil test results. Same thing with lime. If your pH needs to be amended, follow the soil test results. Rutgers will send you their recommendations. And then the compost and the coarse sand, about 1 cubic yard for a 100 square foot rain garden. Mulch is really important. I'm not a big mulcher, but in a rain garden, it serves a couple different purposes. Number one, it makes your maintenance a lot easier. It allows for better percolation of rainwater, keeps the soil nice and moist, and most importantly, if we're talking about treating stormwater, the microorganisms that live in the mulch will actually help to filter out some of the pathogens and break down the chemicals, that you might be finding in the stormwater. So we're thinking of the mulch not necessarily as an aesthetic feature, but more as a functional feature of the rain garden. It also minimizes erosion, so we're actually inviting water into this area of land, so that kind of helps solidify some of the soil there. How many plants is a frequent question, so this is just a general idea. You can always start small, and as time goes on and you see how these plants grow in, continue to add. You'll notice that, the more space plants have, they grow into that space. So for a 100 square foot garden, 1 small tree, 7 shrubs, 24 herbaceous species, things like flowers and grasses. For a larger rain garden, a few more plants. So we're going to be talking about the different types of plants that you're going to be installing in your rain garden. So I recommend this website, plants.usda.gov. And we're going to be looking for specific codes of plants. So oftentimes if you're at a nursery that specializes in native plants, they'll tell you if they are obligate wetland, facultative wetlands, upland plants, etc. Obligate wetlands means they have to be in a wetland. That means that they love to have wet feet. Facultative wetland means so-so, they could survive with wet feet, or they could survive in a little bit more of an upland area. Upland are those upper zones, really dry, not really dry, but not having wet feet all the time like the wetland plants do. So you'll notice that the lowest ponding zone has those wetland codes: obligate wetland, facultative wetland. The upland areas, we want that word upland, facultative or obligate upland, in that sloping area or on the berm. And the middle zone, the slope as it goes down into the depression, either one, facultative wetland, facultative uplands, you can kind of experiment and see. I will be sending out the Rutgers Rain Garden Manual. It's a link to an online manual that you can page through, and they have some great images, some great recommendations of all native plants that are appropriate for installing in your rain garden. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me and I can answer some of your questions about individual plants or direct you to somebody that can. Some of our recommendations for grasses in the base or ponding area, soft rush. In the sloping area, big bluestem is just beautiful all year round. And then in the buffer, switchgrass. Moving on to wildflowers, these are just 4 of so many that you could choose. Boneset is wonderful in the base. Wild bergamot, a beautiful plant for your buffer zone, the upland area. Blazing star, wild onion, and bonus is that these are native and will start to invite native butterflies and pollinators into your yard. The birds like them too. These are some of our favorite trees and shrubs to use: wild cherry, witch hazel, dogwood, winterberry, holly. I recommend choosing plants that are beautiful at different seasons so that you can really enjoy your rain garden all year round. I would only recommend installing a tree if you have like a nice large area that you're looking to install a rain garden. Otherwise, there's a lot of shrubs that are a little bit smaller. Plethora, butterfly bush, no, excuse me, not butterfly bush. Butterfly weed is what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of really great shrubs and forbs and wildflowers that you can install. Again, check out the manual. Here is an example of a rain garden schematic. This person is very artistic with the colored pencils, but you can see some of the species that they chose: blue flag, Irish goldenrod, great blue lobelia, ironweed, aster, serviceberry, black-eyed Susan, Indian grass, switchgrass, bergamot, and witch hazel, all part of this. And these are all plants that are relatively deer resistant. So, you know, we recommend with any new plants doing your best to deter deer by way of fencing or the spray deer deterrents that you'll have to apply after every rain. But especially for the first year while the plants are being established, you'll want to be mindful of browsing pressure. Okay, so now we're into the installation. You've chosen your plants, you've chosen the location, you've chosen the size of your garden. The first thing that you're going to want to do is create the overall structure. So we're going to be preparing the berm that's over there on the left, and that is acting as kind of like a blockade to slow down the water so that it pools in that pooling area for 1 day or less to allow the plants to have an opportunity to pull that water down into the soil. We'll prepare an overflow. This can be something as complicated as adding some riprap or stones, or by simply just making a little notch in your berm and allowing the water to flow out so it doesn't get totally flooded in the event of a really big storm. And this is something that you'll just want to monitor over time. You might design an overflow and then see that the water just wants to flow somewhere else. You can amend it over time. Don't feel like you have to get everything perfect right away, because the rain garden is really kind of a living creature that changes over time. You are going to level the lowest area, the ponding area. This makes it easier to plant your plants. This makes sure that they all get an even amount of water after a storm event to treat. So you'll see in this illustration, we have the berm over on the right, and then the level base there. And off to the left is contributing water to the rain garden. Plant your native plants. Just one key is that the planting hole is the same depth as the root ball. You don't want it too shallow and you don't want it too deep. So just pay attention to, when you purchase the plant, the size of the root ball, and try to mimic that size when you're planting. We also kind of just assume that not all plants are going to survive, so don't feel too sad if not every single plant that you install survives the year. A general rule of thumb is maybe like 50%. So you can plant a little bit extra, just knowing that some of them probably aren't going to make it through the stress of transplanting. Apply the mulch. Fun little tip over there on the left is to turn the planting buckets over top of the plants if the plants themselves are not too tall, so that you can easily apply the mulch. And moving on to our frequently asked questions. We already addressed the mosquito thing. It should not be a problem. If the soil is not draining fast enough, that means that you need to amend your soil by adding compost or coarse sand and potentially add plants. The more plants that you have, the more that water will be treated at a faster rate. Will it cause flooding? No. Rain gardens are actually a tool that will help improve any flooding situation that you have. They really should not be causing any flooding if they're properly installed and designed. Deer, like I said, fencing, deer-resistant sprays, etc. I know I'm up here in Bud Lake and we have a ton of deer, so I have to fence every single thing that I plant. Oops. And then slowing down the speed of water. If you're treating a lot of water and if it's coming really fast into your rain garden, you're going to want to install some kind of a splash pad, some kind of riprap or river rock that helps to kind of slow it down as the water tumbles over the rocks. You can attach a perforated plastic diffuser at the ends of your downspout, and that helps slow down the water as well. But you'll find that these native plants are pretty tolerant of a lot of water, especially the grasses are really strong and great at stabilizing the soil. So just in summary, here's another couple of beautiful images that this rain garden's from Middlesex County. Rain gardens are designed to intercept, treat, and infiltrate stormwater. That makes them sound super functional, but they're also really beautiful. The plants are native and help to improve soil health, invite pollinators into your yard. They're low maintenance, which is great, and should be relatively inexpensive because we're working with what we have when we're talking about rain gardens. So here's the rain garden at Fairview Farm. Fairview Farm is the headwaters of Raritan Headwaters. We installed this rain garden a number of years ago, and it's a little bit more grown up now, but you can see here is the list of some of the plants that we installed. So inkberry, dogwood, clethra alnifolia, some phlox, which is so beautiful, black-eyed Susan, native warm season grasses that we add from year to year as things come and go. The Watershed Institute also has some really wonderful plantings that you can see there. Again, once things are back to normal, we can visit places, but things like goldenrod, cornflower, rush, blue flag, iris, which is so beautiful, different ferns, which are really cool if you have a shady area, great blue lobelia, etc. Okay, so maintenance. I think this slide got a little bit out of order, but again, super low maintenance. We're using native plants. They're used to our climate. So we're going to water the first year while the plants are being established, but after that, they should be pretty good and not require a lot of, if any, water, or you could use your rain barrel. We're going to watch for drainage, so especially the first year or so, watching to see how the water flows in and out and infiltrates into the soil, add plants, amend the soil as needed. And really the only thing you do annually is reapply the mulch so that you always have that 3 inches of mulch. These are just some recommendations of folks in our area that sell, specialize in native plants. All really wonderful people. Toad Shade, Wild Ridge, Bowman's Hill, Cooper's Hollow, Back to Nature, and Pinelands Nursery are also a wealth of information. So if you have plant questions, they are the ones to go to. They're all familiar with the idea of rain gardens, and they're just really great. I'm sure that a lot of them right now are doing or shipping or doing orders over the phone that you can then pick up. That is that. I saw that there were a couple questions, but I'm not sure if I can see them. Let me see if I can figure this out. Stop sharing.
I could read them to you.
I think I'm getting there.
Okay, yeah, if you see in the chat.
Yeah, maybe if you can. I don't think I can chat, Kyle. So do you want to read me a couple?
Sure. First, yes, this presentation will be made available to anybody who came. We're going to send out an email afterwards with the presentations and some other follow-up materials. This was also being recorded, and we're going to put it on our website, riverfriendly.com. And then Jim was asking Lauren, can you run a sump pump water into the rain garden instead of from the roof, which presently goes into a rain barrel system?
Yeah, I would say you could run a sump pump into it. Again, you'd want to make sure that the volume of water when the sump pump is active is not such that it's going to erode the soil. I might direct the water first over some riprap or stone and allow it then to flow into the rain garden.
Okay. And then we had a question if you have any recommendations for a native plant nursery near New Brunswick.
Near New Brunswick. Oh, I think that Rutgers Gardens has an annual plant sale. I can't say that for sure they're all native plants. So you might want to bring your manual with you because I know they have a lot of cultivars, which are super beautiful. But if you want to really specialize in native plants, you just want to double check. But I will send out some of the resources in an email if I can think of. Yes, Steve just agreed Rutgers is not always native, which I don't know why they're not, but you're going to want to do a little bit of homework first. So I'll send out some more resources via email to everybody.
Okay. Is it necessary to remove leaves in the fall, or can they act as mulch?
Oh yeah, leave your leaves. Leaves are wonderful, especially for native insects. Really rely on. I say never remove any of your leaves in your lawn, but you could totally use that as mulch in your rain garden for sure. If you rake them up and just kind of throw them on there, they're great insulation as well.
If anyone can't view the chat, Sharon shared that Temple University Ambler campus has plant sales. So that could be, if you're in that area, that could be a help. And then we had a question from Mario. If you have any recommendations for landscape designers that are good with rain gardens.
We have a partner that runs a company called Dragonfly Designs that really specializes in native landscapes. So I would recommend her. I do think that some of the native nurseries would have some ideas as far as design goes. Back to Nature and Basking Ridge does a lot of work at people's houses as well, and they're great about using native plants. So I would say Back to Nature, Dragonfly Designs. I'll send it in the email afterwards.
There's also a database on Rutgers Cooperative Extension. They run this organic and other like kind of healthy landscaping course, certification course. So anybody who's taken that course, which includes a rain garden designing day, most of those people who are into that kind of organic native plant training end up offering the service as well. And it's a great database of landscapers and design teams who are trained with this and have experience with it. So I can send a link to that as well. You end up searching kind of your county, and it lists those people who've taken the course and serve your county.
Great.
And then if you do see the chat, we have a few other recommendations people are mentioning, like David Hughes at Weatherwood Design. And then one more question, and then maybe we'll switch over to Erin. Scott was asking, how often is weeding necessary in your rain garden?
Well, I guess it depends on your aesthetic. Some people are okay with a more rustic kind of weedy garden, but if you're someone that's a bit more meticulous, you might end up weeding a couple times a year. The mulch will really cut down on your need to weed as well as the density of plants in your rain garden, but it's just kind of a necessary thing to do to weed. So I would say at least once a year, potentially a couple times throughout the spring, summer, and just before fall. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope you found this informative, and you'll have my email afterwards so you can ask questions. And I hope that everyone is happy and healthy and holding in there. And I guess, yeah, now we'll switch it over to Erin. Right?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. This is Erin Landis. I am the River Friendly Coordinator at the Watershed Institute. I think just to go back to one of the rain garden questions, we have used Rutgers Nursery and Landscaping. They're not affiliated with Rutgers University, but I think that they have done a number of residential rain gardens, and we've also partnered with them to install rain gardens in Hopewell Borough as well. So they do have experience with rain garden installation. And we should have time after my presentation to go back to questions about rain gardens if y'all want to, or about downspout planters, which I'm going to present on. So the Watershed Institute, if you all don't know about it, it's also a member-supported nonprofit organization, and we work to keep water clean, safe, and healthy in New Jersey. So we do that through conservation, science, advocacy, and education. We have an education center that's open to the public. Well, it's not open to the public right now. We are shut down, so please don't come here now. But in general, once things open back up, we're open to the public and free. And we also have a preserve of about 1,000 acres with over 10 miles of hiking trails. Again, that is closed right now, but once New Jersey kind of opens back up, we invite you to come there anytime and check us out. So I am going to pull up my presentation. All right, so I am presenting on Downspout Planters today, which is another stormwater management tool that residents can install on their property. So what is a downspout planter? It's essentially a decorative planter box, but it is connected to your stormwater system, usually the downspout, to direct stormwater into this planter so that the vegetation that's planted it can absorb water and filter the stormwater and make it a little bit cleaner. So it actually functions very similarly to a rain garden, except as you can see from both of these photos, they're both in areas that are completely, essentially paved over. So it would be very difficult to, dig a rain garden here. So this is very, it's a confined system, and it sort of functions as a small scale rain garden, and it's great for small spaces. So this sort of shows how the downspout planter is set up and how it works. You can see there's some sort of diverter from the downspout gutter system that's going to divert water into the downspout planter. You're going to have plants in it that are going to be absorbing water and helping to infiltrate the water. The box itself is filled with soil, and then there's going to be some gravel at the bottom. And there's actually a drain from the bottom so that in heavy rainstorms, there will be drainage to get the water back into the stormwater system so that the system doesn't just overflow. You can also see that it's seated on a solid base that would need to be set up in a level space. So again, this is a cross section of a downspout planter, and you can see there's this under drain that I talked about that would be in a layer of gravel here that helps to drain water once this is full. And there's also this overflow. So in heavy rainstorms, when water isn't even filtering through this quickly enough and it pools up here, there is an overflow system to get the water back into the stormwater system. So the benefits, like I said, this essentially operates as like a small scale rain garden. So it's very attractive and beautiful. And we call it a self-irrigating system because it gets the stormwater drained from your downspout system, and it slows and reduces the stormwater runoff, which is what Lauren was speaking about earlier. It does actually hold a good amount of water in it, but that soil retains water, so it is going to function to hold back a certain volume of water. It also slows the flow of water and filters it as well, which is the plant's function in there. One of the biggest polluters of water in New Jersey is one of the biggest non-point source pollutions is actually sediment, so just dirt that erodes And there can be dirt and sediment on our rooftop. So that will all get trapped in this downspout planter and really feed the plants and make the water cleaner once it comes out on the other side. So you may have noticed in the photos so far that there are two different types, wooden and metal downspout planters. There's benefits to each one. The wooden downspout planter actually has different sizing options. So in the previous slides, you'll notice in the last slide, this was a more rectangular downspout planter, whereas the one in this slide, you can see is like pretty square. So it can even fit in a smaller area if you want. And it has the wood makes it have maybe a more traditional look or classic, you might say. Some people like that. The metal downspout planter actually stores more water, and I'll talk about why a little bit later. If you build these yourself, the metal downspout planter is a little bit easier to build. It's also lighter and easier to maneuver when you're installing it. Once it's installed, of course, you shouldn't be moving it, but it is easier to transport and move around. So unfortunately, downspout planters, I have not found them commercially available. I don't think that you can go online and buy these. And if anyone finds a place where you can, please let me know. Philadelphia actually has, I live in Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia has a program called Rain Check, which I should say many of the photos and information that I have in here are from the Rain Check program for Philadelphia. So they have tons of resources accessible, and I'm going to show you their website later on. But they actually fabricate these downspout planters and make them available to their residents. So if you're in that area, you can buy them. Other towns have adopted this system, and so their Department of Public Works might build these and make them available to residents. But otherwise, I do not think they are available for purchase, sadly. You can build them at home. You definitely need some tools like drills and some other basic tools. But if you're handy and have tools, you can make them at home. If you're starting out making these, I would recommend trying out the metal downspout planter first. It's a little bit easier to make. The reason why is that this wooden downspout planter, you really have to do a lot of waterproofing, whereas the metal downspout planter is meant to hold water. So you have to do extra sealing and steps to make this wooden one waterproof. There's also an under drain, which the metal downspout planter does not have, and the under drain requires a lot of PVC piping and gluing and drilling and things like that to install it. So I would recommend building the metal one. So I'm going to go into a few more steps that show how to build the metal downspout planter. So if you were to build this, you would start with a 100-gallon galvanized steel, essentially a cattle water trough. And these you can pick up at Tractor Supply or similar type stores. It's pretty big. I have this guy got one as a bathtub in his tiny house, so you can see how big it is for scale there. And again, this is meant to hold water, so it's meant to be outside. It doesn't need, you don't have to worry about it leaking or anything, and you don't have to do any like waterproofing measures like you do with the wooden one. So the reason that this holds more water than the wooden downspout planter is because you actually install what I call this false bottom, and it is made of this perforated plastic that you cut down to the size of the inside of the trough. That is supported by 4-inch PVC columns underneath it, and so it makes it increases the storage capacity just for water. Because when you install this, you're going to put some landscaping fabric over top of this perforated plastic piece, and then soil on top of it. So the perforated fabric, not perforated fabric, landscaping fabric that would be over the perforated plastic layer will keep the soil from falling into the bottom, but it allows the water to move through it. And so that creates a lot of storage capacity for water, which is going to help reduce flooding and the volume of stormwater. This is me building it. You can see you use hand snips to cut it to shape. And And so after that, you install this overflow piping. So this perforated section, you can see here, we drilled holes in the bottom of this PVC. That is going to be inserted into the bottom of the downspout planter. And it allows, when the bottom is filled up, it allows the water to overflow. And then the area that this guy is kind of twisting here and over here, that's where the water would exit and hook back into the stormwater system and be able to flow out of the system. So there's also, you can see, there would also be an overflow at the top. So once this is filled with dirt, it allows it to overflow from the top back into the stormwater system. So that's essentially it for the construction of this. Again, the Philadelphia Rain Check program, which I'm going to take you to the website in a few minutes. They have really detailed construction plans and guide, and anyone can download that and try this out on their own. So as far as the installation, you want to determine the orientation of the planter, and so that's in relation to where your downspout's going to be, where you want it to drain out, if there's any existing utilities in the area. Once you figure out where you want it installed and how you want it oriented, you want to level the area where the planter is going to sit and install sort of a base to get the planter up off the ground. So the base can be made of cinder block, brick, even treated wood. So at that point, once you have it situated, you're ready to hook it up into your stormwater system. And there's different methods of doing that. You can see here that there's a diverter installed. So the downspout gutter was cut and this diverter installed to get the water into the downspout planter. And you can see that this overflow is hooked back into the stormwater system. If this is installed in an area with a lawn or other permeable area around it, you don't have to hook it back into the stormwater system. You could just make it overflow into the lawn if you're comfortable with that. So this is another example of how it's installed. So you can see on the left is how it looked before, and on the right is after this downspout planter was installed. And you can see that they completely cut the downspout and diverted the whole downspout into the planter, but when it overflows, it goes back into that system. So after it's hooked into the downspout system, then you're ready to fill it up with soil. So at the very bottom, you're going to install gravel. So this photo is for the wooden downspout planter, which has that under drain, we call it, down at the bottom. And again, the metal downspout planter does not need that. But both of them, you're going to install gravel at the bottom to just help the water drain out when it's full. And then above that, piece of landscaping fabric to prevent the soil above it from filling in the spaces in the gravel. And then above that landscaping fabric, you fill it up with soil. You do want to leave a few inches between the top of the downspout planter and the soil, just for a little bit of water ponding. And another tip, where the downspout or water is entering the system, there's probably going to be a high velocity if it's raining hard. And so you do want to install some gravel to prevent erosion of your soil where the water is directly entering the system. So after that, you add your plants and it's pretty much done. I'm not going to get into the details of the plants that you can add. Most of the plants that will work in a rain garden will also work in these downspout planters. Again, the Philadelphia Rain Check program has a planting guide. I believe a lot of the plants they recommend are native. Some are not. So I recommend using exclusively native plants to attract pollinators and butterflies to your garden, to your downspout planter, excuse me. And just a word on maintenance. I don't have a maintenance slide in here, but for maintenance, you will have to maintain the plants as you would with any garden. You might have to replace them if they're not doing well, or trim them back during the off season. But you do want to check out the plumbing every once in a while just to make sure things aren't getting clogged, would be the biggest issue here. If the downspout planter is overflowing just over the sides, that would be a big indication that the plumbing is clogged somewhere. The best time to check it out is after heavy storms, because then you might see problems with erosion or clogging if it's not functioning properly. So I am going to show you the Philadelphia Rain Check program. They have amazing information. So they have guides on how to build these, how to install them, how to maintain them, how planting guides, etc. So this is their website. The website is PWD, which is Philadelphia Water Department, raincheck.org. If you go to the resources section and then their contractor documents, because they have a lot of contractors who are building and installing these features. If you scroll down, in this section, we have a downspout installation guide, downspout planter planting guide, all sorts of materials here that would help you if you are interested in installing these. We also, if you continue to scroll down, down here, there is a maintenance guide for both the wood downspout planters and the metal tank downspout planters. So if you are considering building a downspout planter, feel free to reach out to me. I have built these, and there are some tips that might be helpful, as well as places to buy specific materials or anything like that. I'm happy to answer questions. We have considered doing a workshop at the Watershed Institute where participants would pay a fee and we would obtain all the materials necessary, and then in an afternoon we would all build them together and you could go home with a downspout planter. We have not done that before, but if you are interested, please let me know, as if we have enough interest we could put that together in the fall maybe. One other thing that I forgot to mention that is kind of important to the function, we talked about how the wooden downspout planter has this under drain that allows water to empty from the bottom of the downspout planter, but I did not mention that for the metal downspout planter, and it's a very important feature. So I just wanted to point out that as these are made, they're water troughs that are made to hold water, they actually come with a small hole pre-drilled in the bottom that you can just attach a faucet to. And so when the bottom is filled, you can just open up that faucet and let it drain. And we actually recommend often that folks just leave that faucet open a tiny bit so that once it's full, if it rains and fills up, then over the next few days, the water will just exit slowly through time. So I think that is it. And I am happy to answer questions. I think there were a few questions that came in, but can you read them to me, Kyle?
Yes. So there were questions. One question Steve asked, must the planter be winterized?
So it doesn't need to be winterized because unlike the rain barrel, which is kind of like a closed system that might break when it freezes, these can handle the freeze and thaw. So it doesn't need to be winterized.
Somebody else was asking about if we knew why they're not as popular in New Jersey, if there's anything with like ordinances about like keeping them off streets or anything like that.
I don't think that there are any ordinances in place regulating these. I think that it just has not become commercially popular. Like I said, Philadelphia has this big program that they're implementing, and the downspout planters are part of it. But I don't know if they just haven't caught on, maybe. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. But as far as I know, there's no ordinances regulating their installation.
And that's it. I wanted to remind everyone, so Erin, do you want to talk about the, I got to note that the Watershed Institute has a list of landscape architects and designers.
So I did want to mention that. So thank you, Kyle. So the Watershed Institute recently put on a program to certify folks in green infrastructure. And so it was a program that was specifically geared towards contractors to train them how to properly install green infrastructure, including rain gardens and other features. As well as they're also very knowledgeable in native plants, the rain garden maintenance, etc. So we have that program in the spring. So if you would want a list of any landscape architects or designers that went through that program at the Watershed Institute and are trained, please reach out to me and I will get you that list.
Okay. Maybe we'll do one more question and then let people go, because I know some people are working and stuff, but we had a question about growing vegetables in the Downspout planter.
Good question. That's a great question. I would recommend not growing vegetables. It's similar to the rain barrel, which is capturing water off your roof. So there are pollutants that can come off your roof. So if the Downspout planter is hooked up to your roof, that is a danger. One of the biggest ones is that birds poop on your roof, obviously, but you might not think about it. And so there is a risk of E. coli actually coming from that water. There's also the asphalt shingles can have some heavy metals in them. And again, this is not at super dangerous levels, but I just don't recommend eating any vegetables that come from that are growing in the water off of your roof. Yes, so no, don't grow vegetables in the Downspout planter.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. We hope that you join us. Most people signed up for today, signed up for at least one other one as well. Again, next week, Lauren is going to talk all about the Eastern Bluebird and helping you with kind of installing and finding things to put that in your backyard, which I'm very excited about. Our second speaker next week is going to be Tom Shepard from Hunterdon County Parks, who is a extremely interesting speaker if you've never heard him talk, and he's going to talk about coyotes, how they're landscape here, how you can live with them if you have a field or anything like that or see them. And I think that coyotes are just cool anyway to listen to. And then we have a number of other ones, again, the invasive species and trees the following week. We're going to have an organic landscaper and Jersey Friendly Yards May 6th. That should be interesting. So, and then HABs, hermaphroditic blooms, and aquatic invasive species 2 weeks after that. So we hope that you please join us. If you have anything you'd like specific to touch on, let us know beforehand and we'll try to get it to them. And again, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to be sending out an evaluation via email as well. Hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.